All right, everybody, how's it going? It is Johnny here, back with another episode of Full Time Issues. And hey, we have a fantastic guest, Keitel Frankie. This guy is a huge Arsenal fan. He's got a podcast. He does a lot. He's from London, moved over to Los Angeles a while back ago. And I mean, obviously, we're just going to be talking about the beautiful game. So I'm really excited about it. Keitel, how you doing today?
I'm doing solid, man. Thank you very much for having me on, Johnny. Really looking forward to chatting soccer, football, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, let's start with that. How do you go about the football soccer debate? Because I mean, obviously you're from across the pond, so you're probably go and lean toward the football topic, like side of it. But like, what do you think about that?
In the same way that I don't have like the strongest English accent at this point anymore, I've been kind of like whitewashed over with the whole soccer thing too. So it's all good. Football, I guess, makes a little bit more sense. You kick the ball with your foot. But otherwise, compared to like American football, where obviously it's kind of in their hands most of the times, that's like the only kind of petty point I would make. I guess just like to me, it makes more sense to call it football, but otherwise, it's all good. Everyone knows what we're talking about when we say soccer.
Exactly. I always tell people, because I used to do a podcast with some buddies from Manchester and Liverpool. So I'd always say, if I'm talking about outside of America, I'll always say football. But if I say inside of America, I'll say soccer, just because the perception of it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They know what we're talking about, so there's no issues. So you grew up an Arsenal fan. How did you get into Arsenal? Like was it like a locational thing, a family thing? How did you get into that?
It was partly locational and not at all family. My dad, despite not being like a particularly big soccer football fan, is actually a Tottenham fan, which obviously you'll know those are our direct rivals. It just so happens actually that full circle these days on the podcast you're referencing that I do is with my best friend from back home, and my co-host is also a Spurs fan. So I've kind of learned to sort of live with the friction that exists between the two sides of North London. Otherwise, it kind of came about the Arsenal thing at school. Just my mates, my friends at school were all Arsenal fans, and when you're a kid, you want to fit in, especially being a redhead or a ginger as well. I was like, I really need to fit in because I'm already a little bit different getting made fun of. So I was like, let's do Arsenal. Let's roll with that. All these kids like Arsenal. And yeah, really, like I said, my family's not big into it, but I kind of took it on personally and just played soccer every day. And then that was kind of first and foremost playing soccer, but then following it as well, kind of looking up to aspirational figures. Arsenal had a great team at the time, so it kind of came hand in hand.
And it must be like, because I feel like for Arsenal fans, especially for how you grew up with Arsenal, it's especially disappointing seeing them have such a fall from grace, right? Like they were that top team. They're always in the top five. And then like it just started breaking down. And it seemed like everyone was singing Wenger out, Wenger out. The second he leaves, things just kind of went off the handle. Like how do you take that?
You got to be careful what you wish for, is everything in life. Arsenal at the minute, we're trying to sell a player that Arsene Wenger signed for us a while ago, Granit Xhaka, and he's not always been the most popular, but finally people have seemed to realize sort of like the crucial role that he's played, and it's the type of thing where unless you're paying a lot of attention, it goes kind of unnoticed. And we're about to sell him to Roma. He's going to go defect to a Jose Mourinho team. So good luck to him or whatnot. But same thing, we're not going to have as easy of a time replacing him as people might think. Same thing with Wenger. The guy is a legend. I didn't just grow up with us being like a top 5 club. I grew up with us being like a top 2. It was us or Manchester United for the first few years that I was supporting Arsenal. We would win the Premier League. We had that Invincibles team. We, relatively early on in my Arsenal supporting life, made it to a Champions League final, which was one of the sort of most disappointing matches I've ever seen. We lost obviously to Barcelona in that. That was back in 2006. So the glory days, like what I would give to lose in a Champions League final these days. We're not even in the Champions. We're not even in Europe. So yeah, we've fallen from grace in a big way. But as it's not my only tattoo. I have this Arsenal tattoo, so it's too late to turn back. I'm kind of made my bed and I have to lie in it.
Hey, win, lose, or tie, Arsenal fan till you die, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And disappointment. I mean, this sounds weird, but to me, when it comes to sports, like disappointment is one of the best parts of it in a weird way, because it makes you feel something. Like when it comes to the Premier League, I'm an Everton fan. So, but I feel like the link to it is never going to be the same to like my love for the Galaxy. And like with the Galaxy, like we were the best team in the league forever. And then after, Beckham left and Keane left, we just were garbage forever. Like this is our first okay season, but feeling like that kind of pain is also a reason why this is such an amazing sport. Like nothing else, like, in this type of atmosphere can make you feel this way, and it's just a really special thing. I want to go back to the Wenger talk. What was your like opinion when he finally was canned? Like, were you kind of like, okay, let's get a different perspective, or were you kind of against it? Like, where did you stand?
I've always, despite people who know me well might not think this, I've always been someone to kind of take a backseat and assume that the people, the powers that be in these positions at a professional football soccer club know what they're doing better than I do. So I kind of, we're all fans. We all sit here. I would have done this. I would have done that. How could they do that? But at the end of the day, like, you're not on that training pitch. You're not around the boys, around the squad, 7 days a week, whatever it is. And so I kind of just always benefited the doubted Wenger and just assumed that, this guy is the most successful manager in the club's history. Like, who am I to say that his time's up? But it's hard, those last few seasons weren't super successful. I guess he kind of like clung on for dear life a bit with a few of those FA Cup wins towards the end. That kind of like bought him some good favor with the Arsenal supporters. And if anything, actually maybe was, as a supporter of the club, a bit of like an extra nail in the coffin. Had we sort of gotten rid of him prior to that, we might be in a better position. We might not have had those FA Cups, but maybe sooner would have been better. I think he did overstay his welcome. Hindsight's 2020. But in the moment, I was not your most vehement Wenger out dude. I like the guy a lot.
Yeah, and like, it's weird because when I look at this issue with Arsenal, I thought it was inevitable. I thought the situation that you guys are dealing with now was going to happen either way. Like, you're completely rebuilding a system, right? Like players, staff, like coaching, like all these people were so used to it, and you're kind of just rebuilding it in an extremely competitive league. Like, for me watching it, I thought that, being optimistic, it could have been much worse. It could have been a much worse situation with everything in hand, like, we're talking about. So I think that even after he left, you guys are still kind of rebuilding. And I think that this was just inevitable. If it didn't happen now, it was probably going to happen 5 years from now, but I think that you guys are going to really bounce back in kind of a scary way.
I'm hopeful for this season. Things are looking decent. Arteta's had a bit of time with the same players. He's gotten rid of some players that he's wanted to get rid of. He's brought in a few players that he's wanted to add. There's been some shakeups at boardroom level and executive level since Wenger's kind of been and gone that haven't helped with the transition. We got this super sketchy dude from Barcelona to sign some players for us, and that was like short-lived. And he came and went. We got excited for a minute, and then it's like, see the other side of him, and you're like, well, that was a waste of time. Start again. So we've got Edu, is I think our technical director, and he's a player who I grew up watching play for Arsenal, a Brazilian. So it's always nice to have, both Arteta and Edu, guys who've worn the shirt, know what it means to be a gunner, sort of representing the club on an official level. So I think we're in a better place than we have been, but the Premier League is, as you know, super intense. It only takes a second for you to kind of fall on your ass and realize that you're at the bottom of the table and there's 19 clubs above you or whatnot. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, with the tattoo, and we were discussing before, it's kind of like Arsenal for life. So it is what it is, and win, lose, or draw, I'll be there supporting, waking up at 4 a.m. to watch these games.
Exactly. And like, to me, it's funny thinking about this because when you're used to success and then it's gone for a while and then it comes back a little bit, you appreciate it a lot more. For example, the Galaxy, out of the last 3 games, we had 3 away games. We tied 1, lost 2. One of the ones we lost was by 4 goals. We got creamed. But we were 3rd place in the league, and we've been awful. We're at the bottom of the table for like the last couple of years. So like, even with all of these losses, I'm like stoked still. I'm like, all right, like not bad. A point with 3 games on the road. So like, are you prepared to like go through like that roller coaster of emotions for the next couple seasons?
Oh yeah, it's there's many narratives that play out throughout a season beyond just 3 points, 1 point, 0 points. That's never going to tell the full story of what happens on the pitch, and that's not why you and I are soccer fans. And is entirely for the result that we've kind of alluded to. It's more than just that, and so definitely with Arsenal, there's going to be downs. That's a guarantee. Hopefully, there'll be more ups. But last season, for instance, Bukayo Saka came through the team in a big way. Emile Smith-Rowe came through the team in a big way. Saka ended up playing games at this Euro tournament. Unfortunately, he missed the decisive penalty in the final against Italy. But the fact that there's I think only 19 years old, a 19-year-old kid from my club kind of taking that kick and representing the nation of England is amazing. And so, again, in the down moments, I was kind of like, well, this is cool that we have some local boys coming through the academy, making it into the first team. Like, that's exciting, and you don't see it too often, especially at the top level, because they're so ready to just buy, someone from abroad or whatever it is for millions and millions of dollars to take that place. So same with the Galaxy. I actually, after you hit me up to do this podcast, I thought I might as well sort of like pry into some Galaxy stuff, and I caught the end of were they on the road to, was it Salt Lake the other day, or?
Yeah, we played Vancouver in Salt Lake because we can't play in Canada. Then
Okay.
Salt Lake in Salt Lake, and then Dallas in Dallas.
Well, there was one that you were 2 down, huh? And you made the 2-2 in the end. So, like, before the whistle is blown, the first whistle, is anyone going to be super stoked about a draw? I mean, it's on the road, so that's good. But how much sweeter does it make it when you're 2-0 down and you claw it back? So again, going into that game, you might not be thrilled necessarily with a draw, but there's so much more to it than that, as we were saying. And, I'll be there for those highs and lows, because there's going to be, you need, as I said, you need the low of going 2-0 down to have that high of making it 2-2 in the first place. So yeah, it's a roller coaster, especially with, I think every fan thinks that their clubs are, get the raw end of the deal the most, but I genuinely do feel that in my bones with Arsenal. And I think maybe even with the Galaxy a bit, from living out here, I've noticed it a bit. Kind of, they get a lot of flack in unfortunate situations their way too.
Yeah, and I also will say, because you got to think about it, like I like to be constructive on my club. I like to be real about it. And I will say, like, when the league was growing, the LA Galaxy was given a lot of leeway. Like the David Beckham rule, that was for the Galaxy. The league helped the Galaxy get David Beckham, Like we were the baby of the league. But now I definitely see, I'm a bit more real about it. Like, come on, no one else had 3 away games, and, players at the Gold Cup, injured players. Like we had nobody to use, on these. Like the fact that we got a point, I'm happy about. But you are right in that aspect. Speaking of MLS, like, let's get your perspective on that. Like I've grown up a Galaxy fan. Because it was really hard to wake up in the morning for me as a kid to watch, Manchester United and all that stuff. But like, what's your opinion as, like someone from England coming over to America, seeing MLS and like seeing it grow? Like what's your opinion on that?
I genuinely do think that it has improved, in part because of those, Beckham type signings. There were guys who would come out here before Beckham who were nowhere near as high profile, and then he sort of paved the way for the likes of, Gerrard. It didn't work out as much, but Robbie Keane, Frank Lampard, Andrea Pirlo, David Villa, Thierry Henry, another Arsenal legend who made it out here. But it's improving slowly but surely. The fact that the World Cup is going to take place, the next time, or not the next time, but 2026 after Qatar is going to be between Canada, United States, and Mexico, is only going to help. I can't wait to be in LA for that. I'm sincerely hoping that South Korea qualifies for that, just because of like the population we have here between the Americans, the Central Americans, Mexico are going to be there. And then South Korea, I feel like that could be a lot of fun to be in LA if some of those games are going to take place here. So I think, again, just the focus that will bring, the attention it'll bring, kids are going to be focusing on that as opposed to basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is for that month or so. Hopefully it'll inspire a generation. And, Pulisic, he just won the Champions League, stuff like that. It helps. Having said that, on the flip side, Pulisic is someone who didn't come through the MLS. There's a bunch of other dudes like him in Germany in particular, and kind of around Europe, young Americans who have realized that that's maybe the way to go for them at this point in time, not to necessarily they're maybe not going to end up in the shop window in the MLS in the same way that they would in Europe to get these moves that they'd like eventually. But it all feeds into itself. Success for America is going to be good for a domestic league within America. And I'd see it, moving in the right direction. LAFC, that's cool that there's like a rivalry now, I guess, between the Galaxy and LAFC, El Tráfico, is a good thing. As someone who grew up with a big rivalry in the city that I live in, Arsenal Spurs, even Arsenal Chelsea, Spurs Chelsea, there's all those games. So it's good to have those local rivalries, which it seems like how vastly spread out the league has been until they've added more and more and more teams. Wasn't necessarily the case. I feel like you'd find like weird rivalries between, like, I can only assume that like San Jose versus the Galaxy is like quote unquote a rivalry that people decided at some point in time. But like realistically, it's like, come on.
Well, it's crazy. It's funny that you bring that up because, I've been a Galaxy fan forever. And I know like what I'm saying is an unpopular opinion. I know I'm going to get crap for this, but like, I don't think the rivalry between San Jose and Galaxy have ever been like. I've never felt the animosity that I have for San Jose fans that I feel for LAFC fans. Like I've never seen someone wearing an LAFC jersey and I look at them and just don't like them. And like I'll see someone with a San Jose jersey, I'm like, oh, thank God, another MLS fan, very nice. And I'll see someone with an LAFC fan, and I'm like, oh God, awful. And it's like, but I'm glad that you see that. I'm like one of the only guys that I know, like Galaxy fans that I know that feels that way. A lot of Galaxy fans will still go out and say San Jose is the bigger enemy. And to me, I just don't feel that, because these guys are knocking on our door. A lot of the Galaxy fans that you probably know what it is, but like in America and with MLS, a lot of the MLS haters, we call them like Euro snobs, and like a lot of like LAFC got a lot of those fans that like that weren't into MLS, and then now they are kind of went to LAFC. Have you ever been to any of those games, like an MLS game, like Galaxy or LAFC?
Live in Koreatown, not too far away from LAFC kind of stadium downtown, but I've only driven past. I've been to, StubHub, I think back when it was probably Home Depot, before I actually went to, I don't know if they still do it. I doubt. The David Beckham Academy was set up out there in Carson by the Galaxy Stadium. And I went to that camp as a kid. So I was like in and around the Galaxy Stadium, and I've been to see a couple games. I went when Robbie Keane was out here, and I think one other time as well. So yeah, I'm into it. Again, back to that redhead thing. Not a huge fan of the fact that there's no shade inside that stadium. Jesus, man, like I'm just getting like burnt up. But it's a good time. It's decent soccer. Again, I think Robbie Keane might have scored like a hat trick the time I went to go see him play. So there's levels. You see a guy kind of come in at past, realistically, honestly speaking, past his prime and still sort of sweep the league. Same with someone like a David Villa. So again, it's evident that there's still growth to be had and like catching up to do in terms of the standard of the average player within these squads. But I think you're seeing it now from South America in particular with clubs like Atlanta United. I think today they might even have announced that they're going to be signing this guy, Thiago Almada, who's a really promising young Argentine attacking midfielder from Vélez. And they've gotten other dudes like Almiron, who's at Newcastle now from Paraguay. A lot of these Central and South American guys are, I think, the proximity wise, they could go to Europe or they could make decent money in the MLS and end up, in getting, all these games are televised now. The buzz around this stuff is growing. So I think they're realizing that they don't have to risk moving to Europe and failing potentially to acclimatize. Like you've seen someone like a Robinho go to Manchester City. And I think the dude had like sand shipped in so that he could like recreate the beach of Brazil in his like house because he was so homesick from these types of things. So again, you see these guys, they can come to America. It's not too far, similar climate. And a lot of them are flourishing and ending up getting big moves. Keeping them in the league is going to be the next step, I guess, to retain the quality. But we're still seeing, I think, on average, better players come through the MLS than we have been. So that's a good thing.
It seems like it's growing a lot, and like I've seen a lot of different leagues in the world growing in different sports, and I feel like no league has grown as fast like the MLS. Like there's a complete difference in like the 2014 Galaxy team versus like now. And or as in the league, I mean, like the 2014 MLS league, it is completely different skill wise. It really is. And I think it's super impressive. And, to be a manager, you have to be extremely creative. And something that the Galaxy just learned is, and everyone in MLS is learning is that you have to get MLS experienced managers. We got Scalotto from Boca Juniors. And we were like, yeah, dude, like he's a fantastic manager over there. He's going to do great. We got him here. And the entire structure of the league, it was just new to him. Salary caps, dealing with having games during international break in the summer. Like that's like a whole, like you have to strategize, the depth of your squad with that. Like, okay, who am I losing in the summer? What are we going to do with this? Like a lot of managers don't prep for that. And I think that that's something that's kind of like annoying about MLS, but also I appreciate it,
Yeah, I mean, just look at Phil Neville out there in Miami. I mean, at the end of the day, no disrespect to the position that he held before. Obviously, it was with the women's team, but still, it's the top level. It's international soccer, and he did a great job with the Lionesses. But and again, just the sort of the profile he has. Guy played for Manchester United, England, Everton, the club that you're a fan of, so you know that. But it's not working out. He's got Higuain over there. He's got, I think, Blaise Matuidi over there. But it's just not happening for him. And I think, probably part of that is it's not the Premier League. It's not a league he's played in before, and it's a different continent. It's a different rules, salary caps, as you said, different schedule. I do often feel like I see more rotation in MLS teams than I see in most other leagues. You kind of have your strongest 11 and you try to put them on the field week after week. I feel like out here I see almost like I'll watch one game and then there'll be a completely different midfield in for the next game or a completely different backline in for the next game. I don't know if that's because of guys having to travel to other tournaments for their international teams, injuries being picked up, just how many games they're having to play back to back to back to back to back. But whatever it is, there's something unique about the MLS. And I think you made a great point earlier about just the rate of growth that the league is experiencing compared to other. You're not going to see any other league in the world have the ambition that the MLS has. It still has a long way to go, but it's not even anywhere close to a reality for other leagues to even aim as high as the MLS are, because they're aiming high and it's going to take a while, but they're getting there. They really are getting there.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen. That's the thing. Like before, it was kind of like okay, like let's see where it's going. It's kind of cheesy. We don't really know where we're at. And now it's kind of like, okay, it could take 30 years, but we're going to get there. Like it's going to be a top league. But yeah, and another big thing is travel. Like I thought it was funny when Steven Gerrard came to the Galaxy, David Beckham told him like, hey, this league is going to be tough. He's like, yeah, like you'll probably be better than a lot of the guys, but the travel aspect of it is something you're just not prepared for. And like American athletes are super used to it, obviously. But then like you'll have like, Beckham hated it. Zlatan, he hated traveling across the country for games. He was just like, what is this? Like, I'd only do this during the Champions League. I don't, and I think it's just really funny seeing like these world star, like classic athletes, hating like the travel that much. I just think it just shows like, yeah, MLS is a weird league, but that's what makes it fun, Yeah,
it's kind of impressive how, for however many years these guys in the MLS have been doing that. And then you mentioned just like it's standard in American sports, NBA players, football players, baseball players year round are just, when do they get to see their families? When do they get to just like chill? They don't really, I guess. So it's a level that doesn't exist outside of the States. You could pretty much put England into California. Meanwhile, you've got California and New York and the South and, whatever's up north. And so, yeah, I don't know how I would cope with that. And I also don't know how I would cope with that coming from a professional league that's respected, where I haven't been having to do that. And now I show up and it's like the expectation and the reality. It's one thing like coming through into the MLS and knowing what you're getting yourself in for and sort of having an entire career and then showing up and being like, wait a minute, we actually are doing this? Okay.
And then add turf on top of that, right? Like, okay, we're going to get on a 6-hour flight to Atlanta. All right, guys, like, don't worry about it. Get to Atlanta, get to the field, you step on and bam, turf, which is horrible to play on. And, it's just, there's just so many different aspects. It's like, you would never see that in England. But then again, I think the atmospheres obviously over there are really hostile. I mean, there are some atmospheres here that are pretty tough. Like I hate LAFC, but that stadium probably sucks to play in. Portland sucks to play in. Seattle sucks to play in. But over there in England, it's like every away game probably really sucks. Like how is the fan culture in England compared to America? Like, how do you take that?
Without having had as much, experience out here to really, really compare it to, and likewise without having traveled to too many away games in the past, I would say that obviously, yeah, you're onto something in the sense that kind of European and maybe South American, more like rich historical fan culture is, it's more intense. It's more rowdy, maybe. I think, it comes from just the nature of it in the, how split or segregated are kind of the home and away fans within soccer? Because from what I can see when I'm watching TV within other American sports, they don't really split it up very well, like basketball, or you'll see like rival fans sitting in the same section together. Whereas like in England, like that would be a police concern to see people like that sitting so close together, because it's going to go down. I would go to Arsenal games. I was a season ticket holder. There's a specific section that the away fans go into, and that was especially for games that they knew were kind of bigger rivalry games, always had like police on horseback marshaling that area, because they just know that anything can go down at any moment. And that when that's just like the precedent every weekend being set, that like you need a police presence to prevent these hooligans from, beating the crap out of each other or whatnot. Like,
Yeah.
it's different. I don't know if it adds anything positive to the game, so I don't know if it's anything to be like jealous of in reality, but it's a different beast, and you don't really see it over here. But that's like you're trying to throw decades and decades of culture into a new fan group of people who are like, I'm not necessarily saying getting to like learn the game as they go, but your average American might not be as in tune with the soccer culture as your average European or whatnot.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the whole like how they separate fans and like how we might be jealous of that, but we shouldn't be, because so like what we do is each club, because we don't have fans, like I can't start a chant in a random section and have everyone just jump into it, like because of that, because it's a cultural thing. We have every like club in like MLS will have a like fan sections. So what they'll do is, for example, we have LA Riot Squad, which I'm in, and then we have Angel City Brigade, or sorry, now we call it V Block, which is like 5 different areas of like fan things. So it's like, if you want to get crazy, you sit over there. But then all the other parts of the stadium are fine. Now we do have an away section for fans. So that's like when, Timbers have Timbers Army, really awesome people. They're all cool. We don't hate them. And we have a section for Timbers Army when they come. So we'll say, if you're a part of Timbers Army and you want to get crazy, go sit in Timbers Army. And then besides that, like we're chill with Timbers fans, walk around the stadium, have a great time. The only time it's a problem is with LAFC fans, because they have a big part of the stadium and they still walk around. What I've noticed we do though is we have security around each section. So you'll see a bunch of like those green jacket kind of situations, and then when something happens, they're like right on it.
Mm-hmm.
But the LAFC fans will try to like buy other tickets in bulk. Like one time, they pretended to be a youth soccer club, and they tried to buy hundreds of tickets for another section. And then Galaxy caught it, and then they canceled all the tickets like the day of. Like it gets wild. And just to touch up on what you said about how like we're jealous about it, like I was jealous about it. Sometimes I still get jealous. But one day, one game we played LAFC, we beat them, and they made us sit in our section, and all this shit was just popping off everywhere. And I remember, and then the sheriff's department took our whole section and walked us back to our tailgate and locked us in our tailgate for an hour and a half, because they're like, yeah, we got to make sure all the LAFC people are gone. We don't want any issues. And then at that moment, I was like, yeah, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
This really sucks. I wish we didn't have this right now. But it helps. Overall, it helps the progression. It's kind of funny that, in America, you meet someone else that likes soccer. You go, that guy's my friend. I like this guy. But now when LAFC was created, he'll be like, yeah, I like soccer. I'll be like, okay, well, what's your club? All right, LAFC, I don't like you now. I hate you. And I never thought I'd experience that in America. So I'm also thankful for that.
No, that's good.
Yeah. So one question I have is, who do you support? Because like, obviously you support the England national team. Would the American national team, like the U.S. national team, would that be like your second choice?
Yeah, within the World Cup, for sure. When they're both competing, if there were a situation where the US like made it further than England, they would then become my first choice team for sure. If it's a head-to-head situation, as it was back in South Africa, back in 2010, when Robert Green, I think, was in goal and just basically decided that he'd let Clint Dempsey score. Yeah. So, and actually even prior to that, I think back in England, it was a big thing. Whatever domestic coverage they were showing, actually, we missed Steven Gerrard's goal. Like they just showed they cut to something at the wrong time. So we had like a goal that we didn't even get to see. And then we were like, yeah, let's not win this game. Let's tie with the States. That's a good idea. In that situation, I was an England fan, and I was disappointed that happened. But no. I'm into the United States team. In particular, I remember probably the biggest game that I was pulling for them was likewise same tournament when they went out to Ghana. In that game, I was really like behind the guys, hoping that they would go through. I'm into U.S. soccer. I just think that they kind of, like England have in the past and like Arsenal have more recently, they kind of disappoint a little bit, but maybe the expectation needs to be reined back in, and kind of like people need to understand that just because the US is the best at pretty much everything else, like we have to understand that they're not quite there yet with soccer. But again, Pulisic, Claudio Reyna's son, Gio Reyna, there's some awesome talent coming through, and 2026 could be really exciting for the national team.
I think it will be too. And, I think of golden eras, right? Like, I think, okay, when are all of our guys going to be great? They're all going to be peak ready. And I think it's 2026. But the biggest issue, and I don't know if you know much about this, but like in America, like it's pay to play. If you have a kid that's amazing at the sport and he's like a god at the sport, he's got to pay up to play. Whereas, obviously in Europe, that's not the case. That kid will get great opportunities. Messi had his hospital bills paid for him because he was so good at that age, and that's just something that holds America, because we have such a massive player pool. And, like I played in, like Sunday leagues in like really like small desert towns. And then I played in Sunday leagues in like Orange County and stuff. And the difference is that in these small like desert towns and these like poor communities, those Sunday leagues were insane. The skill in those Sunday leagues were amazing. I was shocked about it. And then I go to Orange County and these kids would be like, yeah, I played D1. I played for UCLA. And they weren't that good, and it was just like, it kind of was just like, man, we're really doing this incorrectly. And it kind of shows the biggest issue with if we didn't do that, I think we'd be like, top team, like in probably the world, probably in like the next 10 years, if we didn't do the pay to play system. And it's just, as a US fan, it just gets so old watching that,
Yeah, the barriers to entry, I guess, within America exist in a different way to elsewhere. Pretty much every Brazilian, you can almost guarantee on that team probably grew up in a favela somewhere, kicking an orange around in the street when they didn't have a soccer ball, and barefoot, whatnot. Don't quote me on that. I know not all of them came from the slums and stuff, but likewise in England, someone like Raheem Sterling, a lot of these guys, they don't grow up with the most entitled or privileged backgrounds, and they're in soccer academies by the time they're not even 10 years old, and it's not considered. Of course, they don't have to pay to be a part of that academy. It's a privilege for the team to have such a talented player on their books that they're going to lay out for their travel, for their their jerseys and whatnot. And so, if the opposite is the case over here, it doesn't help. And it's kind of coming from two ends, beyond just having to maybe pay to get in there in the first place. You're also having to compete with other popular sports like American football, like basketball, like baseball. The talent is there. The athletes are there. If LeBron James decided to play soccer instead of basketball, how sick would he have been at soccer? If all of these incredible US athletes that win gold medals at the Olympics that are just physically, and whether it's because they've had the infrastructure in place to train at these good facilities that other people in less developed countries haven't had, it doesn't matter. They're ahead, and it's just a question of what sport they want to be the best at. And if more of these guys say, I want to be the best at soccer, as opposed to baseball or basketball or American football, the US team would be the best team in the world right now. No question.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, it's so funny that you say that, because that's what we talk, like as American fans, we talk about that. I hear that every day, and I say it every day, because it's just like, it's true, and seeing like, like the Mexican national team, it's fantastic. The sport is in their culture, but the fact that they've been playing it and this has been their religion for this long, and we just started caring about it. You could say in 2010, our nation started to kind of pick it up. And then we're this close to being competitive with Mexico. I think that says a lot. And I think that like using Mexico as like our mirror is kind of showing like our progress, like how well that we've done moving forward, so like you grew up playing soccer. Did you grow up playing soccer like serious? Like, were you like wanting to be professional, or was it the kind of thing where it was like a recreational thing? Because in America, like you gotta ask that. We get oranges at halftime. I hear that's like unheard of everywhere else,
No, I feel like that's a tradition, although I was never like a big orange fan. But no, we definitely, at my games, they would whip the oranges out at halftime. Otherwise, like I played at different levels. I played for my school team. I played for a club team outside of school. I had a cool opportunity to play for some kind of school district 11, and there was a tournament in Sweden called the Gothia Cup that the likes of, I think, Alan Shearer and Xabi Alonso have played at when they were kids, and I got to go to Sweden and play in a soccer tournament where the level was very mixed. We came up against teams who we destroyed, and we came up against teams who absolutely killed us, who I can only assume players from those teams might have gone on to have some professional careers maybe. But for my club team, that was kind of the most consistent high level that I played at. There's one other kid, my the kid who me and him were the two strikers. He plays for Sunderland now. He used to play for Millwall for a little while, and he's not recently been capped, but he's played for the Republic of Ireland national team a few times, and he scored against Poland once back in the day. So there were some solid, level players that I played with. I was pretty good. I tore my ACL when I was like 16, and I was done. I think had I had it within my family, like I said, I don't really have that passion from anybody else in my family. If I'd had my dad or somebody else to really look up to and kind of mold me and give me some good advice, or if I'd had maybe like one coach who had really taken the time to pass on some wisdom and really kind of like turn me into something, polish me up a little bit, I was a great player without tuning my own horn too much. But I was on that kind of cusp of like, had I dedicated my life to it and not been unlucky with injuries, maybe something could have happened. But as it was, I was just like always the best player on the team, and that was as far as it went. Apart from that one kid who was, like I said, played for Sunderland. But no, at school I was always like, oh, he's the best player. And then, kind of with that comes a bit of a personality, or a bit of kind of like your social status as well back when you're in school and stuff too, which I know, I'm sure you'll get from playing sports. But it kind of carried me a bit. That was like my identity, was like the soccer player throughout school.
Yeah, and it's like, I like a lot how you touched up on like the family background of things, because I'm obsessed with sports. Like that's what I'm studying in school, sports and society. And that's the thing a lot of people don't talk about, is like with like people that love sports, it's like you need that push from your parents, like when I played soccer, I played like on like our competitive like town team. And I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. And everyone's like, yeah, he's good. He's really good. And my dad is like, yeah. He's going to stay with it. And I'll be like, nope, I want to play like American football. I want to play contact football. And, my dad's like, oh man, you're going to be 5'9", Johnny. That's not going to work out, man. You need to stay with soccer. But I didn't do it. I didn't listen to him. And, obviously, like, I always watched and spectated it, but you're right. Like if soccer was where it was at now when I was a kid, maybe it would have been different. But you're right. It's like, there's so many aspects of it, especially with America. It's like, if you're a good athlete and you have so many different, like, avenues to look at, it's like, you're going to screw yourself over because you're not going to focus on that one sport that's going to make you great, which happens a lot, but, and then is that different in England? Is everyone like, I want to be a footballer, or I want to be, is MMA big over there? I thought, isn't it kind of getting big over there?
I think within that culture of, like the kind of pub culture, guys who like to go out and have a drink and whatnot, like, yeah, you're going to throw on the MMA and you're going to watch Conor McGregor and you're going to get really into it. I don't know if like children are, en masse, like funneling to the local MMA gym to like have people like choke them out and stuff so that they can like decide whether or not they want to do it. But I'm sure it is. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure it's picking up. Realistically, like our equivalents out here to baseball and American football and basketball is cricket and rugby are the two main alternative sports to soccer in England. The majority of people are into soccer. I guess maybe what would that be, basketball? If you're just like a kid and you're just like talking to other kids, like basketball's what's up, or
I would say American football, because baseball is our pastime. But I would say right now, number one sport in America, obviously not for me, but for everyone else, it's American football.
Yeah, because definitely, soccer, there's no doubt it's number one in England. It is. And then, rugby and cricket are kind of not even necessarily close. Rugby might be behind it, slightly closer, but no, it's like far and away number one. So it's almost like unusual when you speak to someone and they don't have like a soccer opinion or a team that they follow. That was like very much the conversation that would take place at school. And it was a mainly kind of Arsenal supporting school, just where we were located. There were a few Spurs fans. That was kind of like the second biggest thing, but genuinely like a couple handfuls. And it was the type of thing where like if Arsenal had a good result and Spurs had a bad result, like those Spurs fans would get it at school the next day. Like everyone would take the piss out of them. Vice versa, if the opposite happened. And like the ultimate version of that is when the two teams play each other and whoever wins and has the bragging rights, like you're either relishing going into school the next day or you're dreading it. Whereas out here, I don't think it's going to be a long time before LA Galaxy plays LAFC, and whatever the result of that means, that there's going to be consequences for school children around Los Angeles the next day. Like that's when you really know it's embedded within the culture. When you like are afraid to go in because your friend is going to talk smack on your team's performance. So that was kind of a double-edged sword. There's a really popular show in England called Match of the Day that's like a recap of all of the Premier League games on a Saturday or a Sunday, and same thing, like it's kind of just like a culture, a tradition thing for everyone to watch that. But I'll speak to my friends, like if the team that you support has lost on that day, you don't watch the show because you don't want to relive it and whatnot. And so like it's just, it can be like that. It's not like a unique thing to soccer. We all have these emotional attachments to other sports, but that was kind of the standard, and you sort of knew what to expect within social circles, and especially when school, when especially boys going to a boys' school, kids were pretty soccer crazy.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess like when you first came here, was that something that was kind of like lacking? Like when you first moved here and you were experiencing these awesome, because that's something I still deal with. Like when something awesome happens and I want to tell everybody, no one cares. Like when, like I remember we beat LAFC 4-3. That was the very first time we ever played LAFC. We were losing 0-3, and then we scored 4 goals in like 30 minutes, and we beat them in like the last minute. And I didn't know who to tell. I called my mom. I was like, I know you don't care. I just need to tell somebody this. But did you like ever have to experience that? Like when you came here, like you wanted to talk shit, you wanted to like razz on people, but you just couldn't.
Yeah, 100%. I even still find myself at like, again, 4 a.m. by myself, sitting in the dark with my laptop, just like going crazy if we score a goal or something. And, I'm just shouting to nobody and probably waking up my neighbors, but it's a moment that you want to share with people. And so it's hasn't necessarily changed. That's still the case, but I actually was super lucky when I came out here and went to college. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, new roommates freshman year, and often you'll get put in touch with them ahead of time so that you can maybe have some awkward conversation with them and be like, oh, this guy's sick. And then you get there and you're like, oh, wait, whatever. But so I actually was lucky with one of my roommates in that he was an Arsenal fan, a kid from the South Bay, grew up around here, and he's got some Croatian family, and he's a huge Arsenal fan. So I was just like, what are the odds that I'm going to be living with an Arsenal supporter who's American, grew up here, I've never met. So that was cool. We actually would like watch games together, and I guess I could talk to him about that stuff, but there was not that rivalry. I don't think I've met a Tottenham supporter out here. So yeah, it was difficult, but I guess, I don't know, I've always been not like a social butterfly, but somewhat of a social chameleon. And when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So when in America, don't push the boat, don't rock the boat too much. Like nobody cares what I have to say about soccer, and I guess I'm not the most important person in the world as like I thought I was or whatever. So part of it is sobering, and kind of like in that same way that you need to lose games to appreciate the wins, you kind of need to like understand that this is something that's special to, there's a lot of people around the world who care about it, but it's also kind of nice to have something that you can kind of just navigate on your own and, have your emotional reaction to in and of yourself, and sort of just like live with that.
Yeah, and it makes it that much more special too when you meet somebody that loves it. With my girlfriend, she'll be like, "Okay, like you can talk about Galaxy once today, like that's it." And I'm like, "All right, cool," and I'll like go on like a 12-minute rant, and then I'll stop. But
that's
like,
pretty nice of her.
Yeah, it's very nice, very nice. But it does make it that much more like special when you meet a fan like of the sport, just the sport in general. Because it's the global language, and it's like unless they're an LAFC fan to me. If they're just a fan of the sport in general, they're an instant friend to me. And it's funny that you mentioned the roommate thing, because when I first moved to Orange County, I was looking at a room that I found on Craigslist, and the dude was like, yeah, come by. It's like, right in like Anaheim. So I go to check out the room. I have like a Galaxy t-shirt on, and he walks out with like an LAFC jersey. And this is like the first season, like ever. And I walked out, I'm like, oh no. And he goes, all right, well, come on, look at the room. And like, I actually took the room. He's a really good friend of mine now. But we like decorated our doors and stuff. Like they were right next to each other. So we had like the LAFC door, I had the Galaxy one. And when we play, the rule was that we weren't allowed to talk about it after, and it was a good time. I mean, we didn't lose to them until like the next year. So he couldn't really say anything anyways, but it is nice though. It's the global language. What else did you have to acclimate to besides obviously not being able to talk about like soccer? Like, was there a cultural difference? Like, how was that?
Yeah, there's a lot of small cultural differences that can feel big at times, but relatively speaking, it's not too crazy. But like, just the culture, the within that, I guess, to break it down, humor's a big thing, and kind of just like how how certain things are said and received over here versus there. I'm a pretty deadpan person. We kind of have that maybe more dry, kind of crude, depressing sense of humor over there, and we're kind of happy to say something that's awkward and just like kind of let it ruminate and live with that. Whereas over here, I think people maybe might be slightly more sensitive to certain things, which is sometimes for the best because certain things are outdated and we got to grow with the times. But otherwise, like little things like that. My accent has changed quite a lot since I've been out here. I never had like Prince of England like tea and crumpets accent or anything like that, but it's kind of shifted. I remember going to restaurants and being like, they'd be like, hey, do you want anything to drink? I'd be like, oh yeah, could I have a glass of water please? And they'd be like, what? I'd be like, could I have some water please? And I'd be like, water, can I get a water? And they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, exactly. Somebody get this guy some water. But it was just like, and I don't like to repeat myself. I don't like to explain myself. So just naturally, I was just like, all right, let me just do my chameleon thing. If I can speak in a way that people understand more clearly, that's going to save me time and energy. And so it kind of just ended up with whatever you're hearing now, although it can be probably more American at times. And so that was something that I had to adjust to, was people kind of like looking at me when I said something and realizing I was English and being like either not understanding or treating me differently. I remember first week in college in like an English class, I put up my hand and said like some answer that was not particularly insightful, but everyone was still just like, oh, this guy, he must be really smart. Listen to the sound of his voice. But so yeah, there's been little changes, big changes, and I've been very lucky to have my family in LA. So it's home away from home, and even though it's thousands of miles away and I don't go back often, I've never felt entirely removed from England because of that.
Yeah, I feel that. And like, I mean, I think that you went into probably one of the best areas too. Like I would think, because like one of my best friends, and he moved here in like 2017, and we did an internship with the Walt Disney Company in Florida together. He's from the Netherlands, and he moved to now he lives in Long Beach. But it's like that these areas are such a melting pot of cultures, anyways. To where it's like, I live in Orange County. Whenever I meet someone from like, another like European country or something that loves the sport, I'm not really surprised anymore, Whereas before when I lived in like the desert and stuff like that, if I ever met someone from England or something, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like you saw the David Beckham, you lived it, But I think it's a really cool thing. Were you ever like, I guess, did people ever put you on like a pedestal when you originally like moved here and had like your stuff? Where people like, he's cool because he's from England? And if they did that, how did you deal with that? Did you like enjoy it, or were you like, oh, this is weird?
Yeah, my college girlfriend, I think, was into that, so I can't really complain about that. I guess she she was a big Doctor Who fan. And I the first time I met, and a big Harry Potter fan. I hope I'm not burning too many bridges. I'm not a huge fan of either of those things, but like, again, probably neither of those things hurt my cause with her at the time. For what it's worth now, who cares? But like, otherwise, she wasn't the only one. Yeah, the English thing kind of went for me in positive ways. I joined a fraternity when I was in college, saying that doesn't even exist in England. We don't have fraternities. So I was kind of just like, okay, once in a lifetime opportunity. Let me just see how it goes. And I think that likewise, it's like, oh, he's the English kid. And especially when you're new and people don't know you as well. So that probably helped while I was pledging. But yeah, it's, for some reason, there's this fascination with England in particular, because let's not get it twisted. It's not like America just loves foreigners. That's almost the opposite. But like with certain demographics and things like that, England, we seem to get a pretty good deal. I think they think we're cute. Just the accent. They're like, oh, the Queen, that's royalty. Like you're probably, related on something, like not really, but they just think England's like a tiny little, it is small, but like, I don't know. It's almost just like, oh, that's cute. He's from England. Like, but yeah, at this point it's not a thought in my mind anymore.
Do you ever put the accent on when you need it? Like if you're ever like pulled over, are you ever like, oh, my bad? Like when your accent, my bad, I'm new here. No big deal. Like,
I haven't been pulled over yet, luckily, but I've thought about, exactly. Fingers crossed. I've I've definitely felt like I've had it in the back of my mind, like on certain times where I'm like, okay, if they say this, I'm just gonna say like, oh, I didn't know, I'm not from. Oh, you know what? Like I haven't been pulled over yet. Have gotten a jaywalking ticket.
Oh,
And
no
yeah,
way.
yeah, some real BS. Dude was trying to meet a quota in time for something, I guess, but like, it doesn't exist. Doesn't exist in England. I was aware of it here. Like, I tried to act dumb and be like, "Oh, I didn't know. Like, I'm not from here." That was the one time. I don't know if I necessarily upped the accent, had like the presence of mind, but I did reference the fact that I wasn't from here, and like, it was kind of that was my get out of jail card, which I didn't literally end up in jail, but I might technically. I didn't show up to my court hearing either, so who knows?
Yeah, that's awesome. Keitel, I got it because I feel like I would be a bad interviewer if I didn't ask you. I'm jumping topics now, by the way, just a warning about your podcast. I got to ask
Okay.
about it because it looks awesome. I did a lot of research. You guys look like you put so much into this. You have the websites, you have the articles, you have all that stuff. United Mates Football Podcast. How did that start? Tell me about that.
So, probably not the only white dude to start a podcast during the pandemic, but pandemic came around, and my best friend Joe, who is a Tottenham fan, I was kind of referencing him earlier. He's back in London. Things slowed down for both of us work-wise because of the pandemic, and at first it was kind of just like a hey, let's just like an idea, and it's evolved from the first episode is so different to what we're doing now. There's been certain people who've been involved with it at times that aren't anymore. It's really, for the most part, myself and my friend Joe, and it kind of came about as this nostalgic, like, we went to school together. Soccer was a huge part of our lives during school. It's something that bonded us despite this, Spurs Arsenal rivalry. It's something that we still talk about from overseas, and is probably the bulk of our conversations that we have, barring, momentous kind of like life events that each of us have. And so it's that like one constant that has kept us together. And also, I think, just between myself and him, allowed us to continue to make new friends in other places. Often soccer is that kind of commonality point to build upon. And I think we realize the potential that soccer has, for instance, to, that's kind of the core as to why I'm speaking to you today, and the interest that's there for us to have this conversation. And it's something that it's a really easy thing once people have that in common to, bring to a table and then begin a conversation that might spiral off into more personal things, or, things so far beyond soccer. I just think that there's such a liveliness to a soccer fan, and, as you said, beyond LAFC fans, kind of that common understanding, fraternity, or just kind of like family that exists amongst soccer fans, and you really feel like kindred spirits on some levels. And so it's all about that. We speak to guests, we interview footballers, past footballers, coaches, other podcasters, journalists, anybody who we have an interest in, who has an interest in soccer themselves. We want to hear what they have to say, and we want to have conversations about their personal relationship to the game, as opposed to just like, oh, what did you make of the game the other day? X was good, Y was good, he's the top scorer, they're bottom of the league. It's like, it's all well and good talking about those things, and there's a lot of people who do that very successfully and get a lot of attention, but we all know who won, we all know who is good, we all know who's not good, we all have our opinions on that stuff. But it's as we were saying earlier, beyond just the result at the end of the day, the narratives that perpetuate themselves within the world of soccer, they're more meaningful than just the scoreline. And so we try to have those conversations. We try to talk about racism in football, homophobia in football, sexism within football, and bigger issues like that when we can. And we also are, myself and Joe, huge soccer nerds, so we like to play like trivia games and just geek out and have those really dense soccer conversations, but then relate back to stuff that, even if you're not a soccer fan, you can relate to and enjoy. So it's been over a year. We've done, I think, like 80 plus, 90-ish podcasts. We've had like 75 different guests. I don't want to jinx anything, but we're speaking to some people right now who we might be speaking to in the near future on the podcast, who I'm excited to speak with. And yeah, it would be much appreciated if anyone would check it out. But it really has just been something that's been like my lifeline throughout the pandemic, to be a great excuse to spend more time speaking with my best friend from back home, and to get to meet awesome new people who have been guests on my show, and also to meet people like yourself as well through it.
And I love how you broke down that like soccer is every like point of life. It hits everything, you know, with that. It's a cultural thing. It's something that like normal friends can just talk about, you know, all over. It's something here that links people together to each other in an early relationship. Like, oh, you like soccer, I like soccer. That's something that not everyone likes. And it's really cool that you guys were able to kind of like throw all of that into a pod, you know, and in that aspect, especially like in this setting, like I feel like America is like, believe it or not, like there's not a lot of like actual soccer podcasts, you know, so it's like it is cool that you guys are jumping into that, and the more the sport grows, the more people are going to enjoy listening to you guys and understanding that it is the worldwide language, this sport. And like, I mean, you can't sit down and go to Germany and say, hey, did you watch the New England Patriots? You can't do that. But you could say, you know, I'm in Germany, Bundesliga's here. All right, let me talk about some Bundesliga clubs. Oh, I'm in England, let me do that. Or I'm in Scotland, let me do that. You can't do that with anything else. You can't do that with cars. You can't do that with, you know, you could try it with drinks, but it's just not as, you can't go as in depth. But with soccer, you can do it literally anywhere. And I think that's why it just doesn't end. I could literally, and I think you agree with this as well. I could literally talk about soccer for like 14 hours straight, probably more. There's just anything to talk about, you know? So I love it. I'm excited to see where you guys go with it. Do you think, will you be able to tell us who you're talking to or no?
Well, I mean, yeah, I can tell you who I'm talking to. He's someone who kind of fits our podcast perfectly with the whole English and American thing. He's a former professional player who played for Manchester City, Queens Park Rangers. He ended up in the MLS, I believe it was Real Salt Lake, and now he's a regular contributor to ESPN FC as a pundit. His name's Nedum Anua. And he's got his own podcast called, I think, Kickback with Nedum, where he speaks with his old former Manchester City teammates. He kind of was at the club at a really interesting time when the money came in, and so he's played with a lot of the early Man City superstars, as well as the kind of good players who were there when it kicked off, who ended up kind of being shipped out in place of all these international stars. So he's had a cool journey, and he's someone who, if it ends up working out with scheduling and whatnot, I'm going to be really excited to speak with. And regardless of their stature or what they've done within the game, it's just a privilege to speak to people who love soccer, and for them to be interested in coming on my podcast. And it's been so much fun. I've learned so much about podcasting. I'd never done a podcast before I decided to start a podcast. There's all the editing that goes into it. Doesn't have to be that way. You can this is a live thing, and so there's not the opportunity to edit this in the moment, but outreach with guests and promotion on social media and just connections within kind of the podcasting community and stuff. You just learn so much, and I just find this to have been so much more of a valuable experience than whatever the hell I was doing before the pandemic, which was scooping ice cream for for people who didn't appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the pandemic helped a lot of us, I feel like, realize how much we love this. Like obviously, like, I haven't missed a Galaxy home game in like 4 years. And it's like, when I all of a sudden couldn't go, I was like, okay, like I understood that it was a big part of my life, but I didn't know that it was my life. I mean, that's why I originally started the podcast, is I just wanted to talk to people about, people about soccer. I had to keep the obsession going. I was sick without it. You know what I mean? And it's just like something that I guess I've learned, and the pandemic, I mean, taught me this, but it was like MLS, and I'll say this about MLS in particular, I don't think it's like this anywhere else, is the only league in the world in any sport where the announcers and the commentators will walk around the stadium and just talk to fans. It's the only league in the world where the owner of the teams will just walk around the stadium and hang out with people, drive their golf cart around the parking lot, say hi to people. Like Drew Carey is one of the owners for the Seattle Sounders, and he will literally march into the stadium with the fans every single game. And it's just like stuff like that, like, stuff like the pandemic helps you appreciate the community aspect of the beautiful game here, because we're miles behind every other country, I'll say that. But when it comes to being a community and knowing everyone's name in the stadium when you go in, you're not going to get that anywhere else, and it's amazing. And I'm going to tell you this, like, you got to go back to a game. It has changed a lot, and you will experience that like right when you get there. It is just the most awesome thing, man, really.
Yeah, I might even see Kanye.
Hopefully, dude. Yeah, man. Kanye was in there.
He showed up at a Atlanta game the other day, wasn't it? In
That
like
was
a weird
bizarre.
morph suit. Like,
He
yeah.
lost that game too. That was the funniest part. Is like, as a fan, they're probably, oh hell yeah, Kanye's here now. Everything's in our favor, and then they still lost. That's awesome.
No, I'd really look forward to making it back out to StubHub or to the LAFC stadium, even, as you know, LA Galaxy is kind of where my allegiances lie. So it would be as a kind of intruding. Yeah, Galaxy is, I kind of first became aware of them back in the Landon Donovan, Kobe Jones, Kevin Hartman kind of era. So, LAFC, I can't, just because I live closer to that stadium, like that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, they're a new entity. They're like the Man City of the Man United, Man City situation, and that's kind of like that new money. I'm not into it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I don't know if you've heard of have you heard of like when they're like, oh, Carson Galaxy? Have you heard of that?
Oh, because it's not like in LA as people would like consider, or
it's not like in downtown LA, but it's
right,
in
right.
county, But the thing is when they say like, oh, like Carson Galaxy, it's like, it's showing like, hey, we built the league. Like, we got a patch of land and built a stadium with nothing, and we made it work. And they joined the league when it was red hot, when all these people saw the potential in it. And it kind of shows, like, I guess, that difference, So it's like, I'm glad. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to clip what you said. I'm not even kidding, because we all hate LAFC fans. Like, I only have like 2 LAFC fans on my Instagram that are like personal friends of mine. Every other one I will not add. That is a real thing here.
Do you know people within the Riot? How like tight is that community of the Riot Squad?
We're family. Like, I'm part of leadership with Riot Squad. Like, I help out with social media, stuff like that. I lead chants at the stadium or at the games. I love the Riot Squad. I will confidently say this. If it wasn't for the LA Riot Squad, I wouldn't have been going to school for sports and society. I wouldn't have been doing any of this stuff. I know, like, everyone knows each other's names over there. There's hundreds of people. Everyone's cool with each other. Everyone's nice. If you go to a tailgate, you don't got to buy any beer or anything. Everything's there. Everyone's wanting to share with you. It's just the nicest thing. And, I'll say the same thing about Victoria Block with Angel City Brigade, the Galaxians, and the Galaxy Outlaws. They're all the same thing. It's a family. We're a community. We all know each other, and it's like, it's not like that at LAFC. I'll tell you that right now. And it's not like that anywhere else in the world. This is like, it's a very special thing, and that's why I've always said, like, obviously I'm biased to Riot Squad. I've been with Riot Squad for a while, but if you're ever going to a Galaxy game, sit with Riot Squad. Go to the tailgate. Experience it all. It's awesome. It's like cheesy to say it, but it's like, at least in my case, it was life-changing.
Yeah, I'll just can't forget the sunscreen, but it sounds like the rest is there for me to enjoy myself. Yeah.
Go to night games. I have a buddy, he's he's sensitive to the sun, and he's like, I'm not going into day games because I refuse, because the sun will beat right on that little corner, so it's hilarious. But Keitel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I cannot wait to listen to more of those podcasts. I really hope you get those guests on. It is going to be awesome. And like I said, man, hit me up if you want to go to a Galaxy game, dude. You got to experience it, all right?
No, will do, Johnny. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Likewise, going to be tuning in for these upcoming episodes. And yeah, all the best, dude. Look forward to catching you at a Galaxy game sooner rather than later. You said you're in Orange County?
I'm in Orange, yeah, but like, Carson's like 20-minute drive from me, so it's not too bad.
For sure.
Yeah,
but we'll do it.
Oh, put your Instagram. Like, what's your Instagram? Let everybody know how they can follow you and your podcast.
Well, if you want to follow me personally, I wouldn't recommend it, but it's at Touch the Sky. My name's Keitel, Kei, so touch the S, Kei, touch the sky. Again, don't do that though. So waste of both of our times. But as far as the United Mates Football Podcast, that's going to be at United Mates UP on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. If you feel like checking us out on YouTube or Spotify or, any of those places you can find podcasts, just look for United Mates Football Podcast and you'll find us that way.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. And for everybody tuning in, make sure to show up to the tailgate it starts at 3 p.m., 4 hours before the whistle. And you guys know the rest of the details. We'll see you guys against the Portland Timbers on Friday night. And for everybody listening, you guys have a beautiful weekend. Thank you so much.